Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to walk you through the basic assembly of an E11 Stormtrooper replica blaster from Fieldmarshal at the blaster factory. And this is an all metal build, and let's get started. So what you see here in front of you is the base receiver tube that Fieldmarshal provides. Some of the tools that we'll need here is, let's see, your standard Phillips and flathead screwdrivers. We'll need an assortment of hex wrenches, so it'll be a 3/16, 5/32, 1/8, let's see here, 3/32, 5/64, and a 0.05 or 1/20th, the real super tiny hex wrench right down there. So I'll include all this in the description, so no worries about that. But it's good to have one of these universal sets here, but we'll be using those hex keys for this build. Now, there's different ways that you can assemble this. What I'm going to do is to start at the front of the blaster and work my way back. There's a couple things I still need that I don't have, which is the magazine, the power cylinders. I do have a replica Hengstler counter. I'm still trying to figure out how to assemble that. So for the most part, what you'll see here today will be a basic blaster kind of assembly without probably all of this Star Warsy bits. So enough on that point. Let's get started. Like I said, I'll start from the muzzle, the front of the blaster, and work my way back. And let's see how this goes. So the first part here will be to assemble. Actually, let's see here. We'll leave this for a second. We'll install the bayonet lug. So this one will use a 3/32 hex key. Oops, actually. There we go. So on the receiver tube, you'll see that hole right there. That's where the lug will go. Go. So that part is done. And then moving on to the next part here will be the internal barrel. So let's see here. And what I did when I received this was I gave everything a nice bath in some warm soapy water, and then I lubricated all of the threads, deburred them. There's always things left over during the machining process, but makes everything go together nice and smooth. You don't want these threads to get all fouled up. So then this end will be facing outward. So basically you'll slide that in here and you'll orient it like that because it will put the front sight guard next. Here is the front guard, the sight guard. I did have to do some trimming and some different activities here to make this fit a little bit better. I believe I have some videos of that as well. So what I'll do is those should be towards the end of this video. I'll put them all in so you can see, but basically here, just want to give you the rough idea of how this all assembles. So let's see here. You see there? Don't go right into that hole there. And then here's the muzzle. This will fit right in. And then in this case, I'll use the 3/16 wrench. There we go. And then what I also did here was I had to move the front of this guard further back. It was sitting a little bit over the black piece here, but I don't know if you can see. I basically got it aligned to the edge there. So I had to do some filing and whatnot. Also too, let me see. In here, where you'll see next, I'm going to install the front sight. I had to shave back this metal edge here. It was sticking out too much, so it wasn't fitting. But I had to shave that back. So not a big deal. Just use some files, and that was done. So now we move on to the front sight. So you've got 3 pieces there. The holder, this little guys. This is the bolt or the grub screw that will hold it in. So let's see here. So it sits right in there. And then for this one, I'll use I believe this is the 5/64. Yep. This goes right in there. and this will, as you secure it down, will push on the bottom against the receiver tube, and then it'll push up on this bracket and make it nice and secure. So there you go. On the front side here, not sure, but I'll probably have to use some sort of adhesive or epoxy to kind of secure it, but it just kind of sits there for now. And then this little guy just gets screwed in by hand. So while I'm doing this, I'm using my GoPro Hero 8 because what I noticed is on for this particular assembly process, it really takes up a lot of real estate. So I needed something with a wider angle view. This is on the wide setting. I didn't use super view because you could probably see there's already this fisheye effect, but I think this hopefully will turn out clear. So, okay, so that's the front part. The next part will be the Magwell. And what I'll do is I'll take this bolt out. This will use, just so that I've already kind of pre-assembled this. There's a sub-assembly video towards the end, like I mentioned. But that will take a 1/8 hex key, and then this one would be a 5/32. There we go. So this piece will fit right there, and you can access it from this side. There you go. Nice and secure. It's also really nice if you have hex wrenches with the ball end. You'll see in a second here when I install the grips why it's convenient to have this flexibility feature there. So anyway, that's the Magwell. Okay, so now here comes the interesting and fun part. So the stock, which is this, and again I have an assembly video for just this piece, which I'll link to the end. But the hinge here, which goes right here, needs to be in to align the grip in its slot. But because the screws on the stock hinge intrude into the receiver, it's very difficult, almost probably I think impossible, to get the bolt in if you install this first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the hinge, get that aligned with the grip installation. I'm going to remove this, and then I'm going to install the stock and this at the very end. So that's kind of the method to my madness here. But anyways, so we'll get this going. We've got a spacer and these hex bolts, which uses a 1/8 hex key. And the threads on this is very thin, I guess you could say. So Be very gentle as you screw it in. So for this part, you really actually don't need to use this, but just know it's a 1/8. So that just needs to be in there. We'll move on to the grip. All right, let's get organized. So this is the grip, and again, I have an assembly video on this, but these are the bolts, and these are 1/8. Is that the right one? Here's the 1/8 bolt, and you could see that the holes that Fieldmarshal has drilled has the sliding slot. Makes it really easy to install this. So I'm trying to see how I can do this on camera. Hopefully this will come through, but you line up those bolts and you slide it backwards right up against the butt of that. And then you start tightening. Move that back just a little. And this bolt is the one where the ball head really comes in. Hopefully you guys can see that, but just there we go. And then what I was talking about before, hopefully you can see it, but let me see here. You could see where those bolts intrude into the receiver. So that said, now that the grip is installed, I'm going to remove the hinge, and I think I'm going to move on to the bolt next. So really love these little salsa cups. I think it's a necessity when it comes to keeping all your parts together, especially how small some of these parts are. Anyhow, so that's that. And then moving on to the bolt. So here are the pieces of the bolt that we'll be using. So here's the main part here. This will slide in right there. This part slides in so the hole lines up with itself. in. Okay. Then you take the shorter spring, put it on the end of that, and then that goes right over everything. There you go. All right, next up will be the cap retainer, or the cap guide. So this piece will slide on over the back, line up the holes, there you go, and then you have these 3/32 grub screws that hold it in place. Then once these are in, just make sure they're flush, since the rear cap will need to be installed over that. So there we go. Get the cap. Here's the cap, and in the cap you'll see these nubs, so they'll align with the groove here and it will lock in place. There we go. All right, so then moving to the underside, we'll put on the cap retainer. We got a couple different pieces here. Basically, this piece secures this cap from just coming off, I guess. But anyway, let's go through a couple Phillips screws in there. So you just line up the holes. There we go. And you have this really tiny spring. There's a recess at the bottom there that it sits in. And then you have this grub screw that will secure everything, as well as the top latch in place. And this uses the smallest 0.05 inch hex key. So what I like to do is get this started. There we go. And here's a little bit of the tricky part, but you basically have to depress this and line up the grub screw. So, apologies if I can't get this all on camera, but let's see what I could do. Okay, I feel it catching. So the grub screw secures it and also acts as a leverage point. Okay, there you go. All right, so next up will be the folding stock and the hinge. So you have to get this hopefully somewhat lined up. Go. There we go. And I believe this is a 1/8 inch hex key. So there you go. Okay. And there you have it. I did have to make a modification to this section here, and basically I just extended that cutout a little bit further towards the front of the receiver, and this way now when you go to latch it, this part stays nice and secure. Before, that piece was hanging a little bit like that and it was kind of flopping around, but basically that catch just had to extend out a little bit further. So anyway, there's more on that on my build log on the RPF. So getting close here. All right, so let's move on to this final part here, and we'll leave this there for now. So the scope, found that you need to have a couple of washers to fill up the gap on the scope rail for it to sit properly. So and I found that these washers fit these bolts perfectly. I'll put some details in the description about the size of these washers. Pretty straightforward. Phillips screwdriver. We'll make the final adjustments at the end during final assembly, but that's essentially how the scope mounts to the rail. That hole there is for the Hanksler counter, which I've yet to figure out how to assemble, but essentially this will go right, that'll go right there. This piece here slots in to this front hole there. So we'll let it rest there for now. And then the rear sight, I guess you could call it, a couple pieces. If I remember, I believe the serrated edge faces rearward. This piece sits right in there. There's a couple of, I would probably call it maybe decorative nubs. I believe they'll get glued in towards the end when I do the final assembly, but they go right in there. So I'll save that for later. And then all of this is basically secured with a Phillips screw. So it sits right on top there. Okay, there you go. Let's move some stuff out of the way here. And there you have it. E11 Stormtrooper replica blaster from Fieldmarshal. More details can be found in the description, but this is from his website, blasterfactory.com. And there you go. All right, thanks for following along, and stay tuned for more when I get the magazine, when I get the Hengsler counter assembled and installed. I'll get the power cylinders put together and attached, and then of course I have to finish up the T-tracks, bend them, cut them, and install them onto the front part here, and then of course at the end the complete painting and finishing of the blaster. So thanks for joining. Take care.